Dylan Redwine. In the town of Monument, Colorado, a 13-year-old boy named Dylan Redwine lived with his mother, Elaine, and older brother, Corey. Like many children, Dylan was forced to navigate the challenges of his parents' separation, regularly visiting his father, Mark Redwine, who lived in the remote, mountainous region of La Plata County, southwest Colorado. You might assume that Dylan would look forward to spending time with his father, but that wasn't the case. In fact, Dylan actively avoided these court-ordered visits for months. The reason stemmed from a disturbing event the previous summer in 2011. During a visit to Mark's home, Dylan and Corey had accidentally discovered unsettling photos on their father's laptop. While Mark slept, the brothers locked themselves in the bathroom to examine the images. What they saw shocked them. Mark was dressed in a wig and women's lingerie, cradling a dirty diaper, and appeared to be consuming its contents. Corey even took photos of the screen, solidifying this incident in their minds. From that moment on, Dylan became distant and reluctant to spend time with his father. Despite this, on November 19, 2012, Dylan was forced by a court mandate to spend Thanksgiving with Mark. Though Elaine noticed Dylan's discomfort and changes in behavior, she sent him anyway. Before leaving, Dylan asked Corey to send him the incriminating photos. He planned to confront his father during the visit, but tragically, he never got the chance. Dylan was last seen on surveillance footage with Mark at the Durango airport on November 18th, and by the next morning, he had disappeared. Mark reported Dylan missing on November 19th, but his behavior raised red flags. Instead of actively searching for his son, Mark remained at home and acted strangely when speaking to the media. Despite extensive search efforts, the rugged terrain of Durango hampered the rescue operation. Dylan's whereabouts remained unknown for months, until June 26, 2013, when his partial remains, including a piece of his shirt and a sock, were found on Middle Mountain, about 8 miles from Mark's house. Investigators grew suspicious of Mark when they found traces of Dylan's blood in several areas of his home, but Mark continued to deny involvement. 2 years later, on November 1, 2015, Dylan's skull was discovered, with the autopsy revealing that his death had been caused by blunt force trauma. Mark was arrested in July 2017 in Washington state, charged with second-degree murder and child abuse related to Dylan's death. Mark's trial finally began on June 14, 2021. His defense team argued that the minimal amount of blood found in the house could be dismissed and claimed that using dogs trained to detect death scents was unreliable. They proposed that Dylan had wandered off and died due to the elements or an animal attack. However, the disturbing photos of Mark presented in court, along with other evidence, convinced the jury otherwise. Mark was found guilty of killing Dylan in a fit of rage after being confronted with the photos. On October 8, 2021, he was sentenced to 48 years in prison. For Dylan's family, the pain has been overwhelming. His brother Corey reflected on the loss, saying, "I can't bring Dylan back, but I dream of him and pray to him." Dylan became more of a man in his 13 years than Mark ever did in 60. Becca. Around 9:30 p.m. on June 3, 1991, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a truck driver named Eduardo Colin stopped at a Super 8 motel for the night. The motel staff noted that Eduardo appeared to be by himself, but he requested a room for 2. He paid cash for a one-night stay and was told to check out by 11 a.m. the next day. Eduardo smiled, acknowledged the instructions, and headed to his room. Throughout his stay, he had no further interactions with the staff. A few days later, the motel workers noticed Eduardo hadn't checked out, which seemed odd. They sent a security guard to investigate the situation. When the guard arrived at the room, he found a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. After knocking without getting a response, he tried the door, but it was locked. Using a screwdriver, the guard finally managed to enter the room, which appeared empty at first glance. On the table were beer bottles, cigarettes, and other minor items that didn't seem unusual. The real shock came when the guard entered the bathroom. There, he found the decomposing body of a woman hanging from the shower head. Medical examiners later determined that she had died the same day Eduardo checked into the motel. Toxicology results revealed traces of drugs in her system. The image currently displayed shows a photograph found on the motel room desk, a haunting piece of evidence from the case. The woman in the photo appeared to be in her mid-20s to early 30s, about 5 feet 7 inches tall, but no one on the motel staff recognized her. However, they did confirm that the man in the picture was the same person who had checked in, Eduardo. Although police obtained Eduardo's personal information from the motel records, they couldn't locate him for years. Eventually, they tracked down his family, only to discover that Eduardo had died. When investigators showed the family the photograph, they were perplexed. The family insisted that the man in the picture was not Eduardo, and they didn't recognize the woman either. This left investigators questioning the true identity of the man who checked into the motel that night. As they revisited the evidence, one clue stood out. A scale with the name George Martinez written on it was found in the motel room. Investigators suspected the scale was used to measure drugs, leading to a theory that the woman might have been involved in a drug deal gone wrong. To gather new leads, the police altered the original photo found in the room, making the woman's expression more neutral in hopes it would spark public recognition. In March 2021, police received a tip suggesting that the woman might have been named Becca, a California native. However, this lead was never fully explored or confirmed. The identity of the man in the photo remains a mystery, as authorities have yet to determine who he is. Initially, it was believed that the woman, Becca, had taken her own life, but over the years, many have come to suspect that foul play may have been involved in her death. Andrew Macaulay. Andrew Macaulay, an Australian mountaineer and sea kayaker, was born on August 7, 1968. He was known for his ambitious spirit and passion for extreme challenges. In 2003, Andrew made headlines with the first non-stop kayak crossing of the Bass Strait. The following year, he successfully kayaked across the Gulf of Carpentaria. In 2005, Andrew led an expedition across 800 kilometers of the Australian Antarctic Territory. His incredible skills pushed him to seek increasingly difficult feats. His next challenge was to kayak solo across the Tasman Sea, without any assistance, in a standard one-man kayak. Though others had crossed the Tasman Sea before, they used custom-built kayaks designed for extreme conditions. Andrew's attempt would cover more than 900 miles and take over a month to complete. It was a test of both physical endurance and mental toughness, as he would have limited food and water. In December 2006, Andrew made his first attempt but abandoned it after just one night due to freezing temperatures inside his kayak. Despite the setback, Andrew safely returned home, undeterred. By January 2007, Andrew was ready to try again, better prepared for the harsh conditions he would face at sea. Throughout the journey, he stayed in regular contact with his family via radio, updating them on his progress. Halfway through, everything seemed to be going smoothly, and it appeared that Andrew might achieve his goal. However, as he neared the end of his journey, the conditions worsened dramatically. Violent waves and rough weather turned the latter half of the trip into a dangerous ordeal. Despite these challenges, Andrew continued, determined to complete the journey in his unmodified kayak. On February 9th, Andrew made an urgent distress call. "Do you copy? This is Kayak 1. I've got an emergency situation. I'm in a kayak about 30 kilometers from Milford Sound. My kayak is sinking. I've fallen into the sea, and I'm going down." Unfortunately, rescue teams did not reach Andrew in time. In fact, they never found him at all. On February 12th, his empty kayak was discovered, floating about 30 nautical miles from his destination. Andrew had been using a fiberglass dome cover on his kayak for shelter, but the design required him to exit the kayak and manually flip it over if it capsized. It's believed that Andrew lost this dome, which may have contributed to his tragic fate. Though Andrew's body was never recovered, photos found on the kayak showed him in his final moments, a haunting record of his courageous attempt to conquer the Tasman Sea. Skylar Neese. In Star City, West Virginia, lived 16-year-old Skylar Neese with her parents, David and Mary. Skylar had a childhood best friend, Morgan Lawrence, and the two were inseparable for years. However, as they grew older, their friendship faded, although Morgan still considered Skylar close, like family. Another of Skylar's close friends was Sheila Eddy. Sheila and Skylar started high school together and met Rachel Shoaf, forming a trio. The three girls became close and spent a lot of time together. Teachers and classmates noticed they were often loud, and there were rumors they engaged in illegal activities like underage drinking. On July 6, 2012, after a late-night shift at Wendy's, Skylar came home, went to her room, and went to sleep. The next morning, Skylar's father, David, knocked on her door but got no answer. The door was locked, so he used a coat hanger to open it, only to find that Skylar wasn't there. He immediately called his wife, Mary, but she thought Skylar was probably with friends. David calmed down, but later noticed Skylar's bedroom window was open, with a stool outside, suggesting she had snuck out. He assumed she intended to sneak back in and left it at that. 6 hours later, panic set in when Skylar's manager called to say she hadn't shown up for work. This was unusual, as Skylar never missed work or arrived late, so the family contacted the police. When officers searched her room, they saw that most of Skylar's belongings were left behind, suggesting she had planned to return. Shortly after, Sheila called Skylar's family, crying and saying she, Rachel, and Skylar had gone out the previous night. Sheila claimed that Skylar asked to be dropped off at a street corner instead of her house and that they hadn't heard from her since. Police retrieved CCTV footage that showed Skylar getting into the backseat of a car behind her house. Sheila denied knowing the car, and police suspected Skylar had willingly run away. On July 11th, a potential sighting of Skylar with a red-haired girl in North Carolina added to the confusion. Since Rachel was supposed to be at a church camp, this led to more questions. When Rachel returned from camp, police noticed she was unusually nervous during questioning. Investigators asked both Rachel and Sheila to describe the events of that night, but their stories didn't match. Rachel claimed the girls had been in Blacksville at 4 a.m., smoking, and that Skylar asked to be dropped off at a friend's house. Sheila offered a similar story but later changed it, admitting they had dropped Skylar off. The investigation dragged on for months, with police growing more suspicious of Rachel and Sheila. 5 months later, Rachel's mental health began to deteriorate. She became volatile and was sent to a psychiatric unit for a short time. Upon her release, Rachel confessed to the police, saying, "We stabbed her." Rachel explained that she and Sheila had filled Sheila's car with cleaning supplies, shovels, and fresh clothes. They invited Skylar to hang out, then drove to Greene County, Pennsylvania, where they lured her into the woods. On the count of 3, they both pulled out knives hidden in their hoodies and attacked Skylar. Despite Skylar's efforts to fight back, Rachel and Sheila overpowered her. Skylar stabbed Rachel in the ankle during the struggle, causing her to retreat, but Sheila continued the assault. After they were sure Skylar was dead, they attempted to bury her, but eventually left her body under leaves and debris. When investigators asked Rachel why they committed such a brutal crime, she simply replied, "We just didn't like her anymore." On January 16, 2013, Skylar's remains were found. Despite her involvement in the murder, Sheila acted as though nothing had happened, even posting a photo of the 3 girls online with the caption, "Rest easy, Skylar. You'll always be my best friend." Although police struggled to identify a clear motive, there were theories. One theory suggested that Skylar knew secrets about Sheila and Rachel, and they feared she would expose them. Skylar's diary hinted at this possibility. Sheila was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, while Rachel, who pled guilty, received a reduced sentence of 30 years. It was later rumored that Rachel got married in prison, and some speculate that Skylar's knowledge of a romantic relationship between Rachel and Sheila may have been the reason for the murder, though this has never been confirmed by either.